ranked ahead of Michigan, Auburn, USC, Clemson, Florida. And these kids are now 3 or 4 year players. Okay. Now, Texas is going to lose 8 of their 11 starters on defense. But if you look at some of these kids they recruited that's staying, well, for Sam Ehlinger, you have Devin Duvernay, and he is a 4-star recruit. Then you have Brandon Jones, the safety. You have Patrick Hudson, the guard. You have Jeffrey McCullough, who's a linebacker. Eric Fowler, who's a linebacker. Jordan Elliott, defensive tackle. Looking at their recruiting, these guys should be able to fill in some of those 8 of those 11 starters that they lost. It sometimes isn't the worst thing to lose players, if you're a great recruiting team. And we see this with Alabama all the time. Okay. You see it with the Alabamas, the LSUs, the Auburns, the Georgias, the Clemsons, they reload. Now, Texas has been recruiting like they can reload as well. I love how Texas stopped Georgia in their bowl game last year. They looked like they were better, and people can say Georgia wasn't motivated because they missed the playoffs, but either way, they look like they're trying to win that game to me. Ehlinger's got his 2 receivers, like I said, Johnson and Duvernay. Just kind of tell you, this is more of a fade year for me on Oklahoma. Okay. I think that Oklahoma, they lost their quarterback, obviously, to the draft in Kyler Murray. They got a quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who wasn't even the best on Alabama, and you saw some of his pass roll problems. Now, he did come up big. Obviously, when they beat Georgia, he came up huge in that game, and that it was really cool seeing him play like that. But he's more of a clutch moment guy. Throughout the season, you can see how he's struggling. You see the difference between him and Tua Tagovailoa. The biggest thing is that they're replacing 4 starting linemen, as well as their best receiver, Marquise Brown. Oklahoma is. Their recruiting class in 2016 ranked 19th, while Texas ranked 7th. Okay, so this is why I am more on Texas here to make the college football championship. You can also take them right now at 3.5 to 1 to make the 4 to make the playoffs, but I think there's a little bit more value at 30 to 1 to hedge that. I think you can still, possibly get, say they play Bama and Clemson, you'll be laying minus 200 on both of them. You're still going to get 10 to 1 to 15 to 1 value by the time they win that national championship, if that happens. And so you'll be able to make your profit. And I think Texas has a very, very legit shot this year to make the playoffs. The Big 12's down. West Virginia, they lost Greer. They lost their quarterback. Baylor, they've kind of been down over the past few years. They should be better this year, though. But, they've been down. Then you obviously have Texas Tech losing Cliff Kingsbury. I guess the ones I'd be worried about is a little bit with TCU, but they have a new quarterback coming in. I guess Iowa State is always somebody to worry about a little bit. They could be good. But Texas, they have a tough schedule. But if they can just get through that first LSU game, I think there's going to be a lot more. They're going to get a lot of credit if they win, and they do play LSU at home. And so they do have some tough road games at TCU, at Iowa State, at Baylor, but they get Kansas State at home. They get Texas Tech at home. And obviously the Red River Showdown is in Dallas against Oklahoma, which is a neutral site. Love Herman. Love their coach, Tom Herman. I think it's his year to shine in the Big 12. While the Big 12 is a little bit down, I really like Texas to make the playoffs and possibly, make a run to win it. All right. Without further ado, let's get into my top 10 quarterbacks for the NFL draft. Now, obviously, you look at Mel Kiper and Todd McShay and some of their draft rankings. They look at who is going to be drafted, they obviously have their best players available and stuff like that. But they try to be accurate on who our team's going to pick. Now, I'm not 100% convinced that they think that Kyler Murray is the best quarterback out of the draft, but apparently they think that Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals are going to pick him. Okay. And I'm going to cover that a little bit more on the draft podcast next week. But Dwayne Haskins is my number one NFL ready quarterback. And so I have him as the best prospect coming into the draft. See, I'm going to rank the quarterbacks as who I think could be the best in the NFL. Right. You remember I had Lamar Jackson 7th last year, Josh Rosen 8th, but Mason Rudolph I think I had first. But I did have Baker Mayfield 2nd or 3rd, so I did well at that. And I had Sam Darnold right up there as well. So, but right now, I think the most NFL ready type quarterback is Dwayne Haskins. He's weighs 231. He's 6'3". He's got a hell of an arm. He's not too fast, but he's definitely completed 70% of his passes in the Big Ten East, which is a very tough division. Lit up Michigan. The only game he really struggled was against Penn State, and obviously that fluky Purdue game. 4,831 passing yards and 50 touchdowns with only 8 interceptions. That's amazing. Okay. He struggled a little bit. Like I said, at times, but 70% is just absolutely awesome. And he also passed 70% as a sophomore. Some of those plays he got to play in for JT Barrett, 565 yards, 4 touchdowns and a pick. So, he showed flashes the year before as well. Very strong arm this kid's got. I think he sees the field pretty well. I guess, he could have returned to Ohio State, but, you don't want to risk that. I think if you're going to be a top 3 quarterback, you got to come out if you have the chance. You don't want to risk injury or have a down year like somebody I'll go into a little bit later. But the only cons to him is that he tends to feel a little bit too comfortable with a lead. You saw Washington coming back in the Rose Bowl. He couldn't really score that insurance touchdown. You saw that against Purdue a little bit, but still better than most of the quarterbacks at that out there. But his other con, I guess, he only has 1 year as a starter. And contrary to what Stephen A. Smith says, he's not a scrambler. Okay. So he's actually very slow. He only ran 108 yards the whole year. So yeah, he's not that you draft NFL quarterbacks to be a scrambler, but he is a little bit slower compared to the other quarterbacks and might need to make some plays for his feet, especially if you get drafted to a bad team. If the Giants get him, he might have to be a little bit more alert and try to escape some pressure. But either way, Dwayne Haskins is my number 1. Number 2, Drew Lock, quarterback from Missouri. He's my second best prospect here. He's 6'3", 228, one hell of an arm. He can run a little bit. He played well in the Senior Bowl. Sources say they were very impressed. Of the scouts were very impressed, that is, by how he could pick up some of the professional concepts. He completed 61% of his passes in 2018, which is, average for drafted quarterbacks. 3,498 yards with 28 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 6 rushing touchdowns. The fact that I like that he played at the SEC West. Okay. This was a team with lesser talent playing against the Bamas, the Texas A&Ms, the Mississippis, Ole Misses, Mississippi State, LSU, the Georgia. He played really well for the talent he had around him. Okay. And I got to tell you, he had that great game against Florida. He went into Florida and just kind of blew the doors off of Dan Mullen's team. And how good Florida was doing last year. Really love how he did that. Lost some close games at South Carolina. That game was close. A lot of his teammates were dropping his passes. The only cut I gave against him Well, I mean, I guess people say he's not the greatest leader or the most vocal guy. That could be good or bad. It's usually bad, but you don't know that. He could just be those are just scouts saying that. People don't necessarily know what he's exactly like in the locker room. But the thing that's got me the most worried is that they are starting to compare him to Jay Cutler. You don't want to be compared to Jay Cutler. Nobody ever does. And maybe that's the reason why I have him second, not first. But I'm extremely impressed by Drew Lock and his body of work, how long he's been out there. He's done a fantastic job, and he's definitely worth being second in my quarterback draft rankings. Number 3, there's Kyler Murray. I have Kyler Murray at number 3, and he's 5'10". In my opinion, they had to put him on one of those old-fashioned stretchers, stretch his arms and his legs out when he got on that height measurement. I think he might be a little shorter than that, but either way, that's his big knock. He runs extremely fast, as you can see. He's smart and knows when to run. At least he did in college. Threw amazing last year. 69% he threw, 4,361 yards, 42 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He did absolutely amazing picking up for Baker Mayfield when he left. Now, this is also a Lincoln Riley offense, obviously, but he did play in 2015 for Texas A&M and completed 60% of his passes. And he was young, had 5 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, but as you could see, he deserves the way he came back against Alabama. If they had another quarter in that game, it might have been tied, in that playoffs. So you got to give it up for Kyler Murray. Now, the con is that he's small, fragile, likes to use his legs too much, and when he goes against the speed of the linebackers in the NFL, it is going to make a difference. It's also going to make the difference that the hash marks are closer together. Other cons, as rumors has it, he doesn't score too well in the Wonderlic. He doesn't come across as a leader to some of these scouts. But I think the team has to be built around him rather than someone building gets the quarterback and just fills them in to for example, a pocket passer. A lot of pocket passers can walk into a pro style offense. I think that you have to build around Kyler Murray, but it's kind of perfect if the Arizona Cardinals do pick him because they're kind of rebuilding anyway. So they have to build around the next guy that they're getting anyway. It's not just like a plug and play. So, I think Cliff Kingsbury is perfect for Kyler Murray. I'm not necessarily saying that they should draft him though, because I do not like his height, his weight, and I'm worried about some of the things they say about his mentality. He's thought about baseball, and maybe he'll get kind of second question himself if he's not getting the playbooks. He played under amazing recruits, under bad Big 12 offenses. I'm not so sure that I draft him, especially after the Cardinals drafted Josh Rosen the year before, unless they do something with him. But to be honest with you, if you're going to pick between Drew Lock, Dwayne Haskins, and Kyler Murray, I personally believe that Kyler Murray is the best choice for Arizona. If you're going to draft a quarterback, I would draft Kyler Murray if I was Kingsbury. The style he runs, the rollouts, the misdirections, that's the kind of quarterback that he likes to groom. You've seen this before, and you've seen it with the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. So I think I covered that one. Number 4. Surprising one. I have Daniel Jones, a quarterback from Duke. He's 6'5", 221, great arm. He had a great Senior Bowl, trained by David Cutcliffe, the guy that coached the Mannings. I got to tell you, I am very impressed with Daniel Jones. He completed 61% of his passes, 2,674 yards with 22 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, and he didn't play the whole year. He missed a couple games. Love his size. I guess he's a great leader in the locker room. You know, in the ACC, Duke's not a football school, and look how well him and Cutcliffe did for this team. You know, I like college quarterbacks that come out with no talent and yet shine. You know, they don't have the great players around him.